All right, so looking at Unit 2 on biology. So remember that with biology, it's mostly recall and application. Right? So taking what you know and applying it to a situation. There's no skills necessarily to demonstrate, no calculations to perform, or anything like there was in chemistry and physics. So in studying for biology, you should be reading over your notes, right? Making maybe some cue cards or flashcards or something like that to kind of quiz yourself. Okay, something along those lines is probably not a bad idea. Labeling diagrams, okay, stuff like that are all good things to be going over as part of your studying for that. Okay, first thing we talked about in the biology unit was the cell theory. Okay, most of that is going to be multiple choice. Okay, so which of these is not part of the cell theory? Okay, something like that, because there were 3 points to the cell theory. All organisms are made of cells. Cells carry out the basic functions of the organism, and cells reproduce by splitting in half. They are not produced elsewhere. Okay. That said, since it's multiple choice, you still could work in point number 2 into a few of your written response answers. Okay. A lot of the stuff we talked about in this unit had to do with how an organism functions, and one of the most important functions of cells, okay, is to perform the basic functions. That would be metabolizing food, getting rid of wastes, transporting materials, okay, that kind of stuff. So you can always find a way to work that in, especially if a question is asking about something like specialization. Okay? In a multicellular organism, you can talk about how there needs to be different kinds of cells because certain cells might do certain jobs better and cells carry out basic functions. It's easy to work it in a lot of those kind of answers. All right, so am I really worried about people and places? Nope. Okay, not really worried about people and places for this one. Okay. There were only 4 people to know anyway, Hook, Leeuwenhoek, and Schleiden and Schwann, but I'm not worried about that. Okay, modes of nutrition. Make sure you know chemoheterotrophs and photoautotrophs. Okay, know the differences between their cells and cell structure. Remember that a cell's mode of nutrition does dictate some of the structures that it might have. Okay, if the photoautotroph plant, it would have a cell wall, chloroplasts, water vacuoles. Whereas if it's a chemoheterotroph, animal or fungus, then it might have lysosomes. Okay? May or may not, if it's a fungus, it would have a cell wall, but if it's an animal, it won't have a cell wall. Okay? Centrioles, stuff like that. Cytoskeleton. So just make sure you know about the modes of nutrition. It's only in the multiple choice. Okay, so there's a few multiple choice questions about chemoheterotrophs, photoautotrophs, and the effect of that on cell structure. Okay, cell diagrams, label and give function. It's in the multiple choice on your final, on your unit exam. It was in the written response, but okay, on your final exam, there's a picture, and then there's like 5 or 6 multiple choice questions to do with the cell diagram that I put on there. So make sure you go over yours, okay, both plant and animal, because you don't know which one I'm going to put on there. Okay, know the parts and what they do. And because it's multiple choice, you just need to be able to recognize the function. Okay, you don't necessarily have to memorize it and be able to write it out. Just be able to recognize it. Like Golgi apparatus, oh, something about waste. Gets rid of waste. Perfect. Done. Okay, I just have to be able to recognize the answer, not necessarily write it out in detail. Okay. Lots of stuff on lesson 5, which was cell function and transport. And most of that written response stuff is is about cell transport. Okay, so what I've got here is there's more marks in the written response than there is in the multiple choice on cell function and transport. On your unit exam, you had 4 questions in the written response that were about cell transport. Okay. Expect you're probably going to have 2 on the front. Okay. What were the big 3 methods of cell transport that we went over? Diffusion's one, yeah. Active transport, osmosis. Those are the big 3. Okay? Make sure you know them. Make sure you're able to identify when a situation involves one. And that's what you had to do on your unit exam. Okay? One of the questions was about the slug vacation disaster. Okay? They were going to go to the Salt Lake, right? The Great Salt Lake in Utah. Right? Well, that's going to be osmosis, because if they enter the salty water, okay, the salty water is going to pull, okay, the fresh water out of those slugs, okay, by osmosis. Osmosis is the passive movement of water trying to balance salt concentrations. Way more salt outside the slug than inside the slug. Water moves out of the slug, slug shrivels up. Right? So expect something like that, a situational type question where you're going to have to identify, is this diffusion, is this osmosis, is this active transport? Okay, active transport, remember, involves energy. Okay, it uses energy and it pumps things the wrong way. It pumps them from low concentration to high concentration when it usually goes passively the other way. Your question about diffusion on your unit exam actually also had to do with cell size and transport. Okay, it was the picture of the amoeba eating the Enterprise. Okay, or trying to eat the Starship Enterprise. And I asked you, why would a cell of this size not be able to exist? And you had to talk about, if a cell gets too big, diffusion doesn't work, because diffusion is passive and involves the flow of material from high concentration to low concentration, but that takes a long time over long distances. Things get too spread out and stuff doesn't get transported effectively in really big cells. So I told you have to, in a question like that, you demonstrated, I understand what diffusion is, I understand how diffusion works, I understand how cell size can affect its ability to work. Okay. Probably something along those lines. Okay, and then cell size and transport, we kind of just talked about that. Okay, that was the cube activity that we did. Definitely something in written response, and it'll have to do with diffusion. What I just said a few minutes ago. Got ahead of myself. Okay, then we had the lesson on multicellularity and specialization. Okay, we talked about with eukaryotes, eukaryotes are the only multicellular organisms because they have compartmentalization. That's the little organelles inside. That allows for specialization. And what was our example of specialization that we went over? Had several diagrams of it. We were looking at different kinds of cells, all in close proximity, doing different jobs, but working together. Remember what it was? We even looked at it under the microscope. Okay, this was the layers of the leaf. Okay, the layers of the leaf was our example of a multicellular organism with specialization. Go over that. Okay, and then we talked about plant structure, okay? Layers of the leaf was also part of plant structure, so layers of the leaf, that's why I said go over that. It's super important on 2 levels, okay? Know the basic structure of a plant: root, leaves, stem. Okay. there'll definitely be some written response about multicellularity and layers of the leaf, okay? But there'll be some multiple choice about plant structure. Okay, what's the role of each kind of thing? Also make sure you can explain how a plant regulates water. That's why I have stomates on there. Stomates is part of that. Okay? Remember that the stomate uses osmosis to open and close and regulate how much water is lost, but that the waxy cuticle, which is one of the layers of the leaf, okay, is responsible for essentially coating and sealing the leaf against evaporation, so that evaporation only occurs with the stomates. Okay, plant transport. We did a lab on that, so there's definitely going to be a written response question about plant transport. Phloem, xylem, okay, what do they transport? Where are they? How do they do it? Okay, so remember that. Xylem transports water, uses osmosis, the osmotic pulling action from above. Okay, that's what we discovered in our lab, like cutting up off. We didn't discover it because our lab didn't work. Okay. When the roots were cut off, plants are still able to transport water for a bit of time. That's why you always put cut flowers in water. Okay, they'll transport water for a bit, okay, that way. And there'll be some multiple choice stuff about plants and plant transport as well. Okay, but definitely know phloem and xylem, what they transport and how they transport it. Okay, that is definitely going to be in the written response, just like it was under unit exam. Okay, also remember that the polar nature of water plays a part in that. Okay, you've got that osmotic pulling action from above, but you also have the fact that water can hydrogen bond to itself and the inside of the xylem, which keeps it from falling back down. Okay, plant growth and development, so make sure you know how a plant controls its development, know the different hormones. That's all going to be multiple choice stuff. There's lots of pictures, okay, in the multiple choice about you know, how auxins work or gibberellins work or abscisic acid. There was a written response question about abscisic acid on the unit exam, the 2 dormant plants. Okay, ethylene helps to ripen the fruit. Okay, it's a gas. Right. And the big thing about auxins is how they are the mechanism by which differential rate of growth, or tropisms, can happen, how a plant can grow towards light or grow in response to gravity or touch. Okay? All of that is due to auxins being secreted on one side, so that side grows faster than the other side or longer than the other side, okay? Making the plant able to curve. Okay, yeah, so that's differential growth. So on your final exam, there are 15 written response items worth 87 marks. And there are 50 multiple choice questions. I know it seems like it's a lot, okay, in terms of marks, but it's because I'm being extraordinarily generous on some of the questions. They're probably really like 4-mark questions, but I'm making them 5 or 6, okay, so that I can give marks for basically anything and everything. Don't leave anything blank would be a piece of advice for me. Okay? I'm generally looking to give you marks whenever possible, so give me a reason to do so by writing something down. All right, something else that could come up. Okay, we talked about this during when we were talking about microscopy, but that would be like estimating the size of an object. Okay, easy to put that in a multiple choice question. Here's a picture of something you're looking at on high power, where the field of view is 400 micrometers. How big is it? Okay, you'd have to tell me how it's 200 or 150. Okay, could be a multiple choice question for sure. And make sure you know your tropisms.
Is that how many questions there is on final, like the
Yes,
whole thing?
the whole thing. Yeah, no, this isn't just biology, sorry. That would have freaked me out too if I had thought that. No, that's the whole test. There's 15 written response, there are 50 multiple choice. So it's 137 marks. Okay. Questions from you guys on biology? Okay. Have I put the final exam review package up yet? I put it on Google Classroom. I feel like I did. I think I put it up when I did the chemistry one last week. Yeah, I did. Okay, so I put it up on June 10th. So you get the final exam review package. That's the whole thing, as well as just the video that I recorded on review of the chemistry unit. Okay, so you've got that as well. Okay. Couple of other things remember about your final exam. Okay. For you guys, it's not a no-fault exam. It's going to count no matter what, but it's only going to count for 10%. And I just built a spreadsheet this morning for your unit exams. Remember that if you do better on the final than your worst unit exam, it will replace your worst unit exam. Okay? So it's a twofold chance to improve your mark with the final. Okay? So make sure you prepare would be my piece of advice there. Okay? Especially since it does count for you guys. Okay? Grade 11s and 12s have the no-fault stuff, but you guys don't. So okay. You do need to be ready for it. 10% isn't a lot, but it's enough. Okay? And it can make a difference both ways. Okay? You can change your mark for the better or for worse. Okay? So tomorrow we will review physics. Okay? I've left an entire class period for that, and I will also go over the test in detail. Okay, tell you, all right, question number 1 is going to be about this, question number 2 is going to be about this. Okay, so you can really focus your studying. Actually, you know what? We got time to do that right now. Let's do that right now. You're probably going to want to write some of this stuff. Okay, start with a written. Question number 1 in the written, and this goes unit by unit. Okay, there's no it's not random, it's like one global systems question and then a chemistry question. It's chemistry, biology, physics, then global. Okay. Question number 1, 3 balancing. Okay, so I got 3 reactions, fill in the blanks, balancing. 1, A, B, and C, balancing chemical reactions. Question number 2. I give you 2 full reactions and simply, in words, and simply ask you to write them out and balance them and identify the type. Okay, and then question number 3, 3 reactions where I only give you the reactants, and you have to predict the products. And then question number 4, 2 mole equation calculations. 4A and 4B, 2 mole equation calculations. Okay, and then that's it for chemistry on the written. Okay, so the things that were most important: writing reactions, balancing reactions, and mole equation calculations. Okay, those are the things that were big in chemistry. Okay, they're all on. For Unit 2, question number 5 is talking about plant transport, asking how, what. Okay, so what I was telling you, phloem, xylem, tell me how they work, what they transport. That's question number 5. Question number 6 is a cellular transport question. Okay, so one of those situational questions I was telling you about. Here's a situation, which cell transport process is involved, how is that going to work? Question 7 is a plant transport question that involves a little bit of cell transport as well. And it's again situational. Plant is in this situation. How is that going to affect its ability to transport material? I would suggest looking over the analysis questions for your plant transport lab, as it is related to one of them. Okay, and then question number 8 has to do with cell size and transport. So to the cube lab, when the cell gets big, what happens? Question number 9 is a work energy theorem question. So just like the ones we did in class, you know, like slingshots, bows and arrows. Okay? Work is a change in either kinetic or potential energy. Question number 10 is a graphing question. It does not involve any calculation. It is interpretation only. So here's a graph. Tell me what's happening in each section of the graph. Question 11 is an acceleration. And it has to do with a falling object, so gravity. I will also tell you this, you have seen it before. This question is a repeat. Question number 12 is a law of conservation of energy question involving a roller coaster. Question number 12, or sorry, that's it for physics. So question 13 is like the Quincy question on your unit exam. Okay, it is a heat transfer question. Here's a situation, explain how either conduction, convection, radiation is going to work or be stopped, okay, and explain. Okay, question 14, climatogram. Put it with a biome and explain, just like question 1 on your unit exam. And question 15 is a heating curve question. So, Okay, and then for the multiple choice, okay, there are 16 questions about chemistry. Here are some things to look up while you are studying for the multiple choice questions for chemistry. Who developed a nuclear model? So basically, who discovered the nucleus? Points of the atomic theory. Ways to tell an ionic compound from a molecular compound. Terminology to do with solubility. So things like heterogeneous, homogeneous, saturated, solute, solid. Using your solubility chart. Some naming compound stuff. Some polar nature of water stuff. Okay, that's it. So there's 16 multiple choice questions on chemistry. Okay, so in the biology part, there are 11 multiple choice questions. Most of that has to do with, half of it is labeling the cell. There's 5 questions about plant structure and function, and 1 about multicellularity. Okay, then for physics, there are 12 multiple choice questions. And they deal with stuff about energy. And by stuff, I mean like your understanding of it, types of energy, that kind of thing. Thermodynamics. There's 4 questions about graphing. So there's 4 graphs, one for each question. And they range from simple slope calculations to what's happening on this graph to simple calculations of like displacement or acceleration or speed. And then there's a couple of questions about scalars and vectors. And a couple about efficiency. Then we got Unit 4. There's a question about soil profiles, so A, B, and C horizons. A biome question, just like what you had on your unit exam. Here's a picture and description. Components of climate. Water cycle and energy. Heat transfer. Coriolis effect and specific heat capacity. That's how it's distributed. Chemistry is a little more, simply because there's more skills that need to be assessed in chemistry. So there's a few more marks in chemistry. So if you're going to devote a little extra time to one unit, make it chemistry. Okay. There's actually fewer questions on chemistry, but there's more marks because each one's worth 4 marks. Okay. But in terms of time on the test, you'll spend about as much time on each unit on the test. Okay, that gives you a pretty good idea what to look at over the next few days. All right, so tomorrow we'll go over physics. Okay, all the skills and stuff to do with that. And that's it. Tomorrow's the last day. All right, clear off those desks. I'll come around and spray them down.